Bradley, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I greatly appreciate it. It's always great to have Clemson grads.
Oh, yeah, go Tigers.
That's right, go Tigers. But now, for you, though, right now, what is life like? It's off season, so tell me, what do you do during the off season?
Well, there is not really off season, honestly.
So no more. I mean, it's constant.
It's constant. I've already started working out again. I kicked like one time last week for the first time since the end of the season. So there really is no off season. But this time period is probably, besides actually playing, one of my favorites. I get to spend time with my wife that we just got married 6 months ago.
Oh, that's important. Yes.
Very, very important. I get to spend time with my 2 dogs, which I probably enjoy besides my wife. And then I have a house on Lake Kiwi. And we go up there and we do absolutely nothing. I go work out at Clemson. I come back to my house and I do nothing. And
just veg.
Been just fantastic. I watch a bunch of Netflix. I watch a bunch of Hulu. I play with my dogs. When it's warm outside, we go sit on the dock. We go swimming. We have a boat. We go boating. And that's what we do this time of the year.
What's on the playlist then? Netflix, Hulu. Tell me what you're binge watching these days.
Yeah, right now I'm watching a kind of a weird one, actually. I've watched so many of them, I had to kind of find something. It's called Legion. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
I haven't heard of it yet.
It's kind of trippy, I'm not going to lie. So it's one of those, like, the first episode, you're so confused, you have to watch the second, and in the second episode, you're so confused, you have to watch the third, so it just kind of keeps dragging you on.
They do it on purpose.
Oh, I'm so confused. But some of my favorites have been, like, let's see. Some of my favorites on Hulu's. I don't know if this one's on Hulu or not, but Suits. You ever watch Suits?
No. I know of it, but I haven't watched it.
It's really good. Me and Robbie Gold, our kicker, we always pick a TV show every year. Okay. When we're on like traveling and stuff like that, because we're flying all the time, we're on the same episode so we can talk about it and everything, like little gossip girls over there. But Suits is really good. We've had Longmire. I'm a big country guy. Went to the Luke Combs concert last night.
Oh, fantastic.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
But Longmire, it's kind of like a deputy protective type thing in the middle of nowhere. Stuff just, I don't know.
Yeah, are these ones that your wife likes as well, or are you watching these?
No, my wife is watching, like, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, and no, she hates that stuff. She's watching this, like, The Handmaid's Tale and kind of more This Is Us type thing, where I'm just like, give me something manly. Manly,
yes.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you just kicked for the first time just recently. So how is that in terms of rust? I mean, you just go out there and it's just so natural. You can jump right back into it, or do you have to work your way back into it if you've had some time off?
This is actually earlier than I've ever started. And the purpose of it was to kind of not let that rust set in. Because we were only, a month and 2 weeks removed from the season. I usually give myself like 2 months to kind of just get my body back. I usually give myself like a month of nothing, basically. Month of travel, having fun, going places. A month of just working out. And then we kind of start March. I start kicking again because we have to go back for OTAs in April. But this time I was like, you know what, I've been doing that. How about I just like go kick 40 balls once a week, starting mid-February. And that way when March hits and I'm starting to kind of pick it back up a little bit, it's not as much rust to kick off. Because I've noticed the rust has been getting easier and easier to get off, but it's been one of those things where it's been like still so frustrating because I'm like, I know I'm better than this. Like, what am I doing right now? So I decided, you know what, I'm going to go hit 40 balls once a week and see what happens. And there wasn't very much rust to knock off on, I think it was Tuesday when I went out there. So
now, when you're kicking 40 balls, are you just out there by yourself? I mean, so kick 40 balls, have to go retrieve them? And
so I have a bag of 10 balls. I kick 10, walk down, kick 10 back, walk down, kick 10 back, walk down, kick 10 back, and I'm done. Basically how it is.
Now, why don't you kick them and then do a sprint?
See, I've thought about doing that. We really have. So we have really good strength conditioning staff at San Francisco, and we've actually talked about like positional conditioning, and they were like, "You're never just running." And I'm like, "No, never." Like most running I'm doing is to the sideline after a punt, honestly. And they were like, "Well, why don't we incorporate some of your strength conditioning? It's like you punting a ball and then say you have to run down the field." I'm like, that's actually a pretty good idea. So some of my conditioning I've done in the past and started doing this past year is I'd simulate a punt, so I'm not wearing out my leg. I'd simulate a punt, and then I'd take off sprinting 60 yards. And then I'd simulate a punt, and I'd take off sprinting 50 yards. And that was kind of just how we started simulating game-like conditioning, and it worked. It's pretty good.
Well, I think that's a novel concept just to try it. And again, hey, it's another workout for you.
Right, exactly.
Right? So at least getting some cardio in there. How in the world did you become a specialized football player in punting? So walk us through kind of how you gravitated towards sports and then ultimately to be a punter.
Yeah, so my family was always huge on sports. My mom, very athletic. My dad was like wrestling, football, you name it. My family's played it basically. So my first love was soccer. I started playing soccer at like 4 years old. I had an older brother who was 4 years older than me, and whatever he did, I had to do. So he started playing soccer, and I was like 4 years old, and I was like, I want to play soccer. So I'm out. I mean, I was still tall when I was 4 years old, so I'm out there with like the 5 and 6 years old playing soccer at 4 years old, and my mom's like, I'm kicking the ball farther than everybody. So that's kind of how sports got started. It was just because my older brother, and I was way too competitive.
You wanted to be like him.
I was wanting to be like him, way too competitive. But playing soccer my whole life, I played soccer, basketball, football, baseball, tennis, golf, you name it. But football really didn't start until 7th or 8th grade. I used to say, like, I'll never play football, like, I hate football, all this stuff, because I was a soccer player. Like, soccer was my sport.
That was it.
That was it. My grandpa, though, however, was a punter. My grandpa punted for Dallas way back when. For a year. He had like a little stint with Dallas. I don't know if he actually played a game, but he had a little stint when he was down there. And
well, it's even better. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Oh, that's what we grew up Dallas Cowboy fans.
Yes, sir.
Dallas Cowboys and Carolina Panthers. That's who we just pulled for.
America's team.
Exactly. I can't really say that now.
That's right. Yes, we know where your allegiance is now.
So he was like, "Boy, you ought to try," because I could kick a soccer ball a country mile, and he's like, "You ought to try kicking a football." And I'm like, "Papa, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to kick a football." And then I'd push it off until about 7th or 8th grade. And then for Christmas, I asked for a football. And I got the football, and he's like, "No, what? I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to kick it." So we lived right beside my high school, basically. So we walked to our high school practice field. And my dad was like, "What you want to do?" Thinking I was going to want to throw it around. And he's like, "What you want to do?" I was like, "I want to kick it." And so he put it on his foot. I kicked a 35-yard field goal, first time I ever kicked a football in my entire life. I'm talking like straight down the middle.
Just naturally. Just walked out there and kicked it.
My dad put it on his foot, and I kicked it, and it went through the uprights 35 yards. And he was like, hang on, do that again. So he went and got the ball, put it back on his foot, and I did the exact same thing. And he was like, "Stop." Because I guess he saw something. He was like, "Stop. We're going to get you some like professional help." And then that's kind of how it got started. I was literally got a football for Christmas and went out to the field with my dad and kicked a 35-yard field goal. It is kind of funny, though. I used to hate punting. Like, me and punting didn't get along. I wanted to be a field goal kicker and a kickoff guy. Me and punting didn't get along.
Why did you hate punting?
It was hard. Punting is the hardest of them all because you're tossing the ball in the air and having to hit a moving ball. You're having to do all the things that kickers don't have to do. You have to catch a ball, you have to throw a football, basically, and you have to swing your leg. All in within 2 seconds, basically.
That's a lot going on.
A lot going on within 2 seconds. So I used to hate it. But my dad was like, "You have the punting frame, you're tall, blah, blah." And he just kept pushing me. And thank God he did, because there was a point where, like, field goals started going like this for me and punting started going like this. And it was good. But, yeah, I used to hate punting. I actually wasn't even going to punt my freshman year in high school because I played varsity my freshman year. And I wasn't going to punt. Our quarterback, who was Jeremy Cannon, who was actually get recruited for a lot of different schools. He was a knucklehead and ended up not going anywhere, but was going to be our punter. And the only reason I punted my freshman year of high school was because he tore his ACL in like a scrimmage before the season ever started. And our coach was like, "All right, you got to punt now." And honestly think if Jeremy would not have torn his ACL in that game, I'd be a field goal kicker. Because I had scholarships to kick field goals. Like Duke wanted me to kick field goals because they had Will Monday at the time was a punter. Different school, like NC State wanted me to kick field goals. There was different schools that wanted me to kick field goals. And by that time, I had fallen in love with punting enough to know, like, all right, punting is where it's going to take me further.
That you can really specialize in punting.
Yeah. So it was kind of just by happenstance it all.
So that one pivotal moment could be attributed to somebody's ACL getting torn.
But yeah, I firmly believe that, like, if it wouldn't have that happened, because I had no desire to punt, and Jeremy Cannon was a good punter, but he tore his ACL, and there I was 14 years old, 15 years? Probably not even, because I was young.
Yeah, and on varsity.
Yeah, and on varsity. I never played a JV sport, basketball, soccer, or football.
Yeah, because, and again, you're what, 6'5"?
Yeah, I'm 6'6".
6'6".
Yeah, 6'6".
Yeah, I'm so jealous.
Yeah, I actually didn't get to 6'6" until college. I grew up like 2 or 3 inches when I got to college, because I was 17 when I got to Clemson. Yeah.
And then how did you decide on Clemson then?
You know,
how did that come about?
This is even funnier. My brother went to South Carolina. So my brother's Facebook picture to this day is me on a recruiting visit to South Carolina in a South Carolina hoodie, standing beside Marcus Lattimore and him. My brother's Facebook picture to this day.
He's going to keep it that way,
he
right?
He said he's never changing it.
Yeah, of course
I'm like,
not.
You know what? Good for you. But I was started getting pretty highly recruited, honestly, after my sophomore season of high school. And was just like, you know what? Like, I started getting stuff like Alabama, Auburn, Florida, LSU.
And this was for punting now?
This was for all. This was for
all
everything.
of it. Okay.
Basically, like I said, I had offers for field goals. I had offers for punting. I had offers for kicking off. I had offers for all of it. And so I was really, really high on Georgia. Mark Richt was there. There was a coach named Warren Beelan, who actually had a little bit of coached a little bit at the Panthers. And I really liked Coach Beelan. And I was on the way back from a junior day at Georgia, and Clemson was having a junior day on the same day, and I'd picked the Georgia junior day over the Clemson junior day. The first ever letter I got from Clemson, I threw it in the trash. Because I'm like, I'm not going to Clemson. They had the reputation of treating their kickers like crap. That's just kind of how it.
No, what do you mean treating their kickers like crap?
I think it was before the Sweeney era. I'd just seen stuff of like them getting chewed out on the sidelines for missing field goals. This was like kind of right when all this stuff with like the Auburn stuff was going on, when we had missed the field goals against Auburn, and it was just kind of all that was going on. And so the kicking stigma at Clemson was not very good at the time. So I threw my first Clemson letter in the trash, to be honest with you. My brother was sitting there, and I was like, I'm not going here. I'm not going here. I'm a South Carolina fan.
Yes.
And threw it in the trash.
And he was happy with that.
He was loving it.
Yes.
He was loving it. But I was actually really high on Georgia. Was basically like almost committed to Georgia. And on coming back from a junior day at Georgia, and I get a phone call, and it was Mike Dooley is who it was, who works for Clemson. And he said, hey, like, we know you were at Georgia today. You have to drive right past us on the way back to North Carolina. Why don't you just stop by on the tail end of our junior day? And I'm like, why not? Like, it'd be cool to see the campus. I walked on campus and fell in love with the campus. Like, Immediately fell in love. This is back when the recruiting rules were a little different. You could actually run down the hill. So they threw jerseys on us, ran down the hill, and my mom said the moment she saw me run down the hill and the look on my face after I ran down the hill, she knew I was going to Clemson. Clemson hadn't even offered me yet. Get this. Like, Clemson hadn't even offered me yet. But they knew I was going. My mom was like, I knew that. She didn't say it, but she said later down the road, she was like, I knew you were going to Clemson after that moment. But
Did you feel the same way?
They had like went from like the bottom of the barrel to the very like top three really quickly. And then after that, I started going to like a bunch of Clemson games because it was only 2 hours from my house. It's only 2 hours from Charlotte where I grew up. So but I started going to a bunch of Clemson games, started coming to more junior days, started getting to know them. But I still just didn't have an offer from them. And I was like, they're not going to offer. I mean, I had offers from like Auburn, ECU, NC State, UNC. I had all these offers, Duke, like all these ACC, SEC offers, but Clemson was still kind of sitting there. And I was like, well, this is really where I want to go. Like, I can't like make it seem like this is where I want to go, but like this is really where I want to go. And finally, the head came and watched me kick in high school, like down at Northwest. Then they were like, you know what, we really want to Coach Sweeney really wants you to come to a camp and kick in person. I was like, y'all seen me kick like 5 times. Just, are y'all going to offer me or not? And I ended up giving in and coming down for a camp. And I was like, I'm not coming for the whole camp because I had like literally a lineup of camps that I was going to go to. I was going to like literally be like a 2-week road trip is what it was going to be. Like Florida State, Florida, coming back up the coast, and then go up like Boston College. Like, we had this whole thing mapped out. And
and would you do that every summer? Or is this just the summer?
This was the summer going into my senior year. Kind of when like I had already had a bunch of offers, and I told myself I want to commit somewhere before my senior year, so I can just enjoy my senior year. And so it was one of those things like, all right, visit all these schools, see all these camps, and I'm rolling. And Clemson was probably the sixth or seventh camp that summer, and went to the camp. Was actually sick, had like a head cold, was not feeling very well. Honestly, didn't even punt that well. Kicked off pretty well, but I punted well enough. And Coach Rooney was like, "Don't leave. Come see me in my office." Walked in Coach Rooney's office. He's like, "Hey, we're offering you a full ride." Like, finally, everything. But I had to I had to contain my excitement. I'm sitting in his office like, "Oh, I really appreciate it," but on the inside, like fireworks are going.
So you had
off.
your poker face on.
Yeah, I had my poker face on. I can't let him know I'm like basically going to commit. But then I had it nailed down to UNC because my brother was 4 years older, like I said, and was leaving South Carolina to go to North Carolina to get his doctorate. So I could have go to school with my brother, which would have been cool. I had it down to North Carolina, Clemson, and Georgia. This basically was my top three. And I have a really good mentor still to this day, my kicking coach, Dan Orner. And I called him, and I was like, all right, I want to make this decision. And he was like, all right, well, let's make a decision. And so we sat down and we started weighing out pros and cons, and which I wasn't pitching him to be biased to North Carolina because he actually kicked at North Carolina. And but he was very unbiased and was like pros and cons, and all right, it looks like you're leaning towards Clemson. And I was like, all right, looks like I'm leaning towards Clemson. Well, then the craziest thing happened. My parents had split. And my dad lived in Hickory, North Carolina. My mom lived in Concord, Charlotte area. And I used to have to go to my dad's on certain weekends and come home. And I was driving back from my dad's, and me and my dad just had a conversation about, like, where am I going to go, blah, blah. And I'm driving through the, I guess you'd call it the Salisbury area on 40 right there. And I had a little old S10 Sonoma truck that my dad had since literally the day I was born, and I ended up driving it for a while. And I'm driving down through there, and I'm a very religious person. And I turned the music down, and I'm like, you know what, Lord, where do you want me to go? I literally just turned the music down and was like, Lord, where do you want me to go? And I remember specifically seeing the Salisbury sign, or the sign, and just kind of sat there for a minute with the radio off. I was like, Lord, just give me a sign, give me something. Like, just give me something. Like, I want to make sure I'm making the right choice. And turned the radio back up and went on about my business. Didn't think anything of it. The next day, I go in for workouts in high school, and this was like right, I had some more camps come in, so I wasn't really working out really hard because I didn't want to be sore, but I was kicking a lot. And went into the coach, and I was like, hey, I'm not going to work out today. I'm going to go down to the game field, and I'm going to kick some. And he was like, oh, you can't go to the game field. It's just got aerated. It's not going to be any good. I never went to our practice field to kick. Our practice field's like out on an open track, and I just never went down there, and our practice field was terrible. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to the practice field. So I go down to the practice field. It has an open track where the public can come and walk around. And I mean, I never kicked down there. They had, like, my high school to this day I have a key to our stadium, because when I was in high school, I would ask them so many times to come unlock the stadium so I could kick. They were like, screw it, here's a key.
Yeah, exactly. We're tired of helping you out. You just
here's a key.
go when you want to.
I learned how to work the lights. I knew everything about the stadium. So I was down at the practice field, and I'm kicking, and I'm going about my business, and then this Prius pulls up. And in Concord, North Carolina, back at that time, you really didn't see Priuses.
No.
Like, at all. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Like, it's a Prius. And then, not to be racist or anything like that, but this big black guy gets out of the car. I'm like, well, that is something you didn't really see in Concord either at the time. And I'm like, all right, now what's going on here? And then, make it matters, he was carrying a stick, probably a foot or two long. And I'm like, all right, something weird's happening. Like, so I'm still kicking, but he starts walking around the track, and I'm kind of watching him out the corner of my eye, I can see him keeping an eye on me, and I'm keeping an eye on him. Like, all right, something's about to happen here. Something's about to go down. I don't know what's going to happen. So he eventually starts walking up to me, and I'm just like, all right, here we go. I'm either throwing the football and running, or I'm fighting. And he walks up to me, he's like, are you Bradley Pinion? And I'm like, well, yeah. And he was like, I had a dream last night that I was supposed to come talk to you. The Lord came to me in a dream last night that said I was supposed to come talk to you and just chat. And some of the things that he told me, he said he was a preacher from the Salisbury area, which was just ironic because I was driving through Salisbury. He gave me my favorite verse I've used for the rest of, I will use for the rest of my life. It was Proverbs 23:7. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And this was like right when I'm trying to figure out where I'm going. So it's like, what is your heart telling you is basically what the Lord was telling me. And then he just told me, he was just talking to me about like different things and just life in general. And I probably talked to him for a good 20 minutes, it seemed like. He never told me his name. He was wearing, like, I'll never forget it. He was wearing a bright orange Clemson colored T-shirt. Like, and that's, the Clemson orange.
I know
is just
the Clemson orange.
It didn't have a
yes.
tiger paw on it. You very rarely see a Clemson orange shirt without a tiger paw on it. Didn't have a tiger paw on it. And he goes to walk away, and I turn around to pick up my footballs and start kicking again. And I turn back at like, it would seem like 5 seconds. I don't know if it took me a minute to pick up a football and kind of mess with it and turn back around. He was gone. It seemed like 5 seconds, but he wasn't there anymore.
He wasn't there.
He wasn't there anymore. So I start getting like the shakes, chills, like just on the football field, trying to kick a football, and I'm like shaking. I can't drop it. And I just burst out in tears, like just literally start crying on the football field. So I load all my stuff. I was like, I can't kick anymore. Load all my stuff up, and I drive home. I lived like 5 minutes from the field. And I get to the front door, and I don't know if my mom could just sense something was going on or what, but she was already at the front door, like waiting on me to show up, which never happened. Waiting on me to show up. And I'm bawling. She comes out the door, like as I'm pulling in, like, what's wrong? But all I could get out, and this is the worst part, was big black guy and stick. That's all I could get out. Like, that's literally all I could get out.
That's not what
that's not what she wanted to hear.
No.
But I finally got the whole story out. So she's crying, I'm crying. And I really didn't think about or see the Clemson colored shirt until like a day or two after. And I was like, all right. And then I actually went to like Google the guy because I just wanted to reach out and like thank him for coming and talking to me. The guy doesn't exist. I've tried for the past, 10 years probably to find the guy. He doesn't exist.
Nothing.
No, he doesn't exist. I fully believe it was an angel of some kind. I know people might think I'm crazy for saying this, but fully believe an angel of some kind. For I had said a prayer and God answered my prayer. And that was really when all right, I'm going to Clemson. That's kind of just like how it all happened was just craziness. Only the good Lord can make stuff like that happen. So that was kind of how it all was like, all right, I'm going to Clemson. I called Coach Sweeney the next week and said, all right, I'm coming. And from rest is history.
Did you tell Coach Sweeney that story?
I think he's probably heard it. I don't know if I've actually just straight up told him, but I think he's probably heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when you started that story and said this crazy thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were right.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. People look at
crazy.
me cross-eyed when I tell them the story.
But I don't discount it, though. Because now it took me a while before I came to my faith until I was like 36 years old. I'm about to be 48. But just some of the things that I've been able to witness, I can't explain them either.
No, I couldn't explain it. And I've tried to find him. So if you're out there and you listen to this podcast, reach out.
Yes, Bradley needs some help just for closure here.
I can't find. I fully believe he just doesn't exist.
Did you feel a sense of calmness once you had made the decision in your mind?
I knew I'd made the
going
right
to Clemson?
decision. Knew I did. That was right when Clemson was on the up and up. Coach Sweeney had really just starting to kind of get in his groove as coaching. I had met, actually that junior day, I met my best friend to this day. First junior day I went to Clemson, met my best friend to this day.
And who's that?
Oliver Jones, O.J. Jones. He ended up going to Clemson with me and playing. We lived together the whole time we were at Clemson. So everything just felt, I met my wife at Clemson. She was from Pickens, South Carolina, of all places. And if you're from the area, you know Pickens is not very big. So it was everything. It was
meant to be.
Everything just fell into place after that. Literally one thing after another. It was unreal. It really was unreal.
Now, you had mentioned also kind of during this whole time frame that your parents split up. How did that
it really
affect you?
It had a profound effect on me. That happened in 7th, 8th grade. So kind of right when football was starting to get big for me. And football ended up becoming my release. When I would get frustrated if things were going on, when I'd be like, all right, I need to get out of here. It wasn't a bad divorce or anything along those lines. They still talk to this day. They're still very cordial. My dad's remarried, and my mom's doing her thing, and it's still very cordial. Well, there was just some times where I just needed to get out of the house.
Yeah, because the family structure was
I mean,
fragmented.
They were married for 25 years, so it was one of those things where it was like all I knew, like all my brother knew, and like I lived like literally across the street when my parents were still together from our high school, so I could walk to the practice field. I walked to school a lot of the times, and so I would just grab my bag of footballs and walk to the practice field, and
do your thing,
and do my thing when I needed to get away. So I honestly think if my parents wouldn't have split, I probably wouldn't be where I am today because I wouldn't have thrown myself into football like I did. Because football was my escape, my release. When I was angry, if anything, I would go to the football field. If I was sad, I'd go to the football field. If I felt like I was going to cry, I'd go to the football field. And there was times where I wouldn't even kick when I was at the football field.
I'd just go out there?
I'd go out there and it's like sit on the 50-yard line and just kind of look around and kind of like envision things. Like, all right, this is kind of where I want my life to go. And there's times where I'd go out there and I'd hit like 200 footballs because I'd be mad, which looking back on was stupidity. But
no, why was that stupid though?
Because you're wearing out your leg, you're overdoing it. You're like, right now, I'll probably in workouts I'll never hit more than like 50 footballs, just because I'm to the point now where everything's just fine tuning and making small little adjustments or trying to work on something or working on a specific kick or something, to the point now where it's like if I'm going out there and hitting 200 footballs, I'm just taking years off of my career.
It can be that precise that you are limiting yourself.
Yeah.
So almost like a baseball pitcher.
It's exactly like a baseball pitcher. I'm on a like when I'm at practice during the season, I'm on a pitch count. We call it a kick count, but it's a pitch count. Yeah.
That's just amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's very much like a pitcher. Very, very much like a pitcher.
So it's much more scientific than people give punting and kicking credit.
Oh, for sure. My brother is a physical chemist, so he's very scientific. Where physics and chemistry meet, that's where he does. He's considered like top 5 in his field in like the world. He works for Intel. Wait, like you ever seen the TV show Big Bang Theory?
Yes.
So he'll pause the TV show on Big Bang Theory and read the formulas on the blackboards and stuff in the background. Like, all right, I know that one, and then keep going. Like so, literally, like
he wants to solve that problem.
Leonard and Sheldon and everybody on Big Bang Theory are him. So he's real smart, and I've actually like talked to him about the physics of football, how the football flies and everything, and it's actually pretty cool.
So has he helped you understand a little bit more, or is it not?
I mean, a lot of times it's so over my head, I'm just like, yeah.
All I need to worry about is like, don't get this thing blocked.
Right.
Get it off
Basically.
as fast as possible.
But it actually really helped in the beginning because a lot of punters want to like swipe the ball to make it spiral. But when round objects meets round object, they're going to spiral off of each other. Well, the top of your foot's round and the bottom of the ball's round. So all you got to do is make contact with it, and it's going to spiral some sort of way.
Now, did you have a natural spiral? Because you talked about how the first time you ever kicked, you kicked it right through the uprights. But what about punting? Did that come as natural as well?
Yeah, probably even more natural. I always had a problem with my drop. Like the drop's one of the most important things in football for punters. And I always had a problem with my drop, but I was always so quick and good enough with my leg to where I could make the spiral happen. And it used to frustrate my dad so bad because he would go to all these workouts and instructional stuff with me. And he was like, no, you can't do that. Like, you need to fix your drop. You need to fix your drop. And I'd be like, I'm all right. I'm hitting spirals. I'm hitting balls that turn over. Like, I'm fine. And I honestly didn't fix my drop until probably going into my second year in the NFL.
And so what do you mean fix your drop?
So my drop used to turn sideways. So, like, you want your drop to be pretty straight. Like, almost, like, straight. So if you put a clock around a ball sitting here, this is 12 o'clock, this is 1 o'clock, and this is 11 o'clock, you want your ball anywhere between 11 and 12. You don't want it getting inside of 11 because then you're having to turn your body and cut up through it, and you're losing distance and everything. And my drop used to turn past 11 all the time. I would just turn on it and make it go.
But you compensated somehow.
I compensated because I was a bigger dude, and it made for it in leg speed and leg strength. And that's how I compensated. And then when I finally got to the NFL, I was like, all right, I probably need to fix this. But it's something I wish I would have done way earlier.
You think it would have helped at Clemson? Would it have helped that much?
At Clemson, no. Because we had such short fields all the time when I was at Clemson that I ended up hitting what's now called the Aussie kicks, basically, where the end-over-end kicks. I hit that 95% of the kicks at Clemson. Just because we were always like at the 50-yard line. Clemson, you're either going to stall out on like the 10, or you're going to stall out on the 50, or you're going to score a touchdown. There is no in between when I was there. I'm talking like I went from like Taj Boyd, Cole Stout, Deshaun Watson, right? So Taj Boyd, it was like you're either going to stall out right when you get the ball. You're either going to go 3 and out or you're going to stall out at the 50 halfway through the drive. Cole Stout was like, all right, I kind of don't know when I'm gonna punt, but I'm gonna be ready. And then Deshaun, I was just sitting back on the bench the whole time, like, oh, all right, here we go. So that was my 3 quarterbacks my 3 years at Clemson.
Now, how did you make the decision then to leave Clemson early?
Yeah,
because that doesn't necessarily happen too often. And I'm not sure ever for a punter.
Second time in the history of NFL, punter left early and got drafted.
Okay, second time.
Yeah.
Because I do remember.
And the other one was actually Gardocki, another Clemson guy.
Yes, another Clemson guy. So that's right. I do remember that 91 that he did leave. And I think he got drafted in the 3rd round.
He did, yeah.
Okay, that's right.
There's been other punters that left early, like Brad Wing from LSU.
They didn't get drafted, though.
No, and he left early because he got in trouble.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
So it was a little bit different situation.
You made the decision to leave.
I made the decision myself. So it was another one of those God things. I'd been contemplating it just for my own sake because I felt my career, not me as a person, but my career at Clemson to the point where it was very stagnant. We were going to be really good. We weren't really going to punt a lot. If we were going to punt, like I said, it was going to be short fields. I had just set the record for Clemson for punts inside the 20 with like 40-something in a row without a touchback. I had basically broken my own record that year of punts inside the 20. And so I was just kind of like, only thing I'm going to be doing is kicking off, which is great, but I know I can already kick off. So I used to go to a Bible study on Wednesday nights with a group of the guys. And the Bible study we went to that week was like, mapping out your future. And this was like right when I was considering it. I had talks with my family about it and was just kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. Like considering your calling was what the title of the Bible study was about. And it was like, hit me in like a punch to the face. The guy was like, all right, here's you asking me all these questions about what you do next year. Here's your answers. And I was just like, okay, I guess I have a decision to make. But yeah, so it was, same thing, like God, I asked God for some help, and He said, "Here you go," and tossed it my way. And
did you talk to other people about it?
Yeah,
other than your family.
Yeah, I talked to some people that I really confide in close to my mentors, and they were very unbiased. Some of them were like, "No, you don't need to do it." Some of them were like, "Yeah, I could see you doing it." And then I actually sat down and kind of looked at the facts of the matter, and that was really one of the huge deciding factors. Was like, the class that I came out of college in, where I got drafted, there was like no punters whatsoever. It was like me.
I think you were the only specialist that was drafted.
There was me, and the pick right after me was a long snapper for New England. But that was it. Like there was like no really good kickers, no really good punters, besides me. And I was like, well, that's a good factor. And then if you look at the class where I was supposed to come out, you had, without me even being in the class, you had 4 kids drafted. So, and I knew, like, you're a kicking fraternity, you know most of the guys.
You know.
So I knew all those guys, and I was like, well, not that I don't think I'm good enough, but, like, I can get a leg up and go ahead and get a year in the league when all these young cats, I say young cats, kids of my age.
You're still young. What are you talking about?
But all these young cats are going to be trying to come in. And so that was kind of like more of a strategic move because I saw the opportunity, kind of studied it, knew I was good enough. I had the feeling in my gut that I was good enough and just went out on a limb and made the decision. And, you know, a factor that went into it, which is kind of funny to say. I don't know if I've ever admitted this on camera or anything, but me and my wife at the time, we dated for 6 years, but it was like right at a time where we had broken up for a little bit, and she was at Clemson and I was at Clemson, and I think it was kind of one of those, like, I think I needed to get away from Clemson because she was there and I was just, so I think that was kind of part of the reason I left. I kind of hate to admit that, but like me and my wife had just broken up, well, girlfriend at the time had just broken up. And I was like, man, I need to get out of Clemson. Like, she's here. I got to get away from her. Granted, I ended up running back to her 3 months later, but
of course, that's how it works.
That's how it always works. But I think that kind of played in it, a role in it, because it was just like it was just like everything was telling me I needed to just take the next step.
Time to move on. Let's open a different chapter.
Yeah, and it was like it honestly couldn't have worked better. My same kicking coach, Dan Orner, When I called him and told him, like, all right, I'm doing this, he was like, all right, here's the deal. Because I was like, I'm using you to train me. Like, you're the only person I'm ever going to use to train me. He's like, all right, here's the deal. We're going to work this day. This is what we're going to do. And we mapped out my whole plan. I hadn't even had a combine invite at that point. And we were planning for me to get a combine invite. Like, we were going to plan if you go to the combine. If not, you're, pro days right after that. Yeah. So we mapped it out, got a late combine invite, went to the combine, had a great funny combine story. So Joe Cardona is the long snapper in New England. He snaps the crap out of the ball. And of course at the combine you're kind of got jitters and going on and everything. And Joe's been snapping and I've been catching him and punting him and having a good day. Was kind of starting to feel myself a little bit. And Joe snapped one and it bounced off my hands and hit me square in the face right at the combine. And I was just like, oh, I'm not getting drafted. This is bad. I just took a snap to the face. But no, it was.
Yeah. Had you ever had that happen to you, or how many times have you had that happen where it's
take a snap to the face?
Yes.
That was about the only time I've ever taken a snap to the face. I've taken some to the groin region a few times, just kind of like not paying attention. My long snapper happened to snap it, and it just drills you because that's kind of what they're aiming for. So
yeah, that's right.
It's perfect aiming spot. And
that's a target.
Not paying attention and just drill you, and you're laying on the floor like, oh yeah.
Then the pain goes into your stomach.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you better be paying attention.
Yes.
Without a doubt. So tell me then what it's like then at the combine though. Now you talk about there's some jitters or whatever, but I mean you got all these people just watching you. Talking about a pressure-packed type of situation because, I mean, you're fighting for potentially your livelihood.
Yeah. So my combine experience was insane, to be honest with you. So it was like right when a snowstorm came through. So flying out of Charlotte in the snowstorm just doesn't happen because Charlotte's not used to it. So I was actually probably 8 hours late getting to the combine because my flight had got canceled. My flight had been rescheduled.
So you're like, great, this is a perfect way to start.
If you know how the combine works, you do basically interviews the whole first day. Interviews and medical the whole first day. Well, I didn't get there until like midnight. And I started my medical at midnight. And when I'm saying medical, you're talking like MRIs, X-rays, 7 tubes of blood drawn.
At midnight?
Oh, at midnight.
Why didn't they just wait till the next day?
Because there's so much you had to do the next day. So they were like, well, we got to get this in. Well, then I had also missed all these interviews with all these special teams coaches. Well, so then I'm starting to have to make up all the interviews. So while everybody else has a little bit of downtime, I'm making up interviews. So my combine experience, I tell people, is a great experience. Loved every second of it. Wouldn't want it any other way. But it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience I'd only want to do once in a lifetime.
That's it. Yes, you did it.
Literally,
you're done.
I did it.
You got the T-shirt.
So
right?
exhausted because you're waking up for a drug test at like 4 a.m. You're waking up at 4 a.m. to go stand in front of a bunch of NFL scouts in compression shorts and get weighed and measured. I mean, it's insane. And by the time you actually kick and stuff, you're so exhausted that I literally got off the plane in Charlotte and my mom picked me up, and I think I slept that whole day. I was so exhausted from planes getting delayed to talking with coaches because you're trying to be proper, you're trying to say the right thing.
Oh, you got to be on the whole time.
You're trying to be on it, and everybody was grilling me because they're thinking like, this kid is a junior coming out.
Yeah, why did they ask you? Why are you leaving? There's got to be some reason.
Every single coach I talked to, and I talked to 30 teams at the combine. Every single coach I talked to was like, why? And I had like a script with my agent. We had scripted out this whole answer, and by the end of it, I was like, I felt like I was good enough. Like, and I was so hot by the end of it. I was just like, y'all know the answer already. So, yeah, it was a crazy experience.
What did Coach Sweeney say when you told
He wasn't
him?
extremely happy. I went to him actually before we played Oklahoma that year in the Russell Athletic Bowl. I went to him kind of in preparation for the Oklahoma game, and I walked in there, and it was kind of funny. I don't know if you saw it coming or what, but I walked in there and was like, Coach, I just want to thank you for recruiting me here, blah, blah, stuff. I got like 3 words out, and he was like, you're leaving early, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, I am. And of course, he did his trying to convince me to stay, and which all coaches should do.
Yeah.
Because they want what's best for their team. And then once I kind of stood my ground and was like, I already made this decision.
Yeah, in your head, you were physically,
I'm not changing
mentally
my mind.
checked out.
So he was like, okay. And then I proceeded to tell the other coaches like Danny Pearman and guys that I really appreciated in the building. And after that Oklahoma Bowl, after the Russell Athletic Bowl, I beating Oklahoma. Came back to Clemson, packed up my stuff, and went to Charlotte.
Just like that.
Just like that.
So no time to really celebrate the big win against Oklahoma.
Started working out.
Just go.
Lost 25 pounds preparing for the NFL.
25?
25 pounds. I was at 250 when I came out of college and was 225 when I went into the NFL.
I don't think I knew that. 250-pound punter.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, you're 6'6".
Yeah, granted, it was also college and there was a little bit of beer weight involved. But
what are you talking about? I thought you were supposed to be, training at the highest level in college, right?
No, so I was 250 and then actually lost 25 pounds.
How'd you lose 25 pounds?
I did a lot of hot yoga or Bikram yoga, and then I did this workout place. There's actually one right down the street, Metabolic. We did a metabolic workout every day, and then basically hot yoga every day, and ended up losing, just sweating out 25 pounds, basically, or 25 pounds. And it was I needed it.
Have you kept it off?
I put it all back on in muscle. So I was like a still scrawny little kid, because I was only 20 when I went into the NFL. So I was a scrawny kid. I still had baby fat. Like, I was still very young.
You're still young.
Yeah.
You're still that young cat, man.
Don't feel like it sometimes. No. I put it back on. I'm about 240 now. I stay in between the 238.
But that's a good weight for you.
Yeah, that's where I want to be. I stay in between 238 and 245. As the season wears on and you're stress eating and everything, I get up towards 245. But like right now, when I'm in pretty good shape, working out all the time, I'm usually below 240, right at 240.
Now, did you have any of the players, though, come to you and say, "Man, you're crazy. What are you doing leaving
I had
early?
fans.
You're a punter."
I had fans. I had other
I'll
coaches.
go ahead and tell you.
I mean,
when
I'm
I
sure you
saw
talked
the
crap
news,
about me,
I was like, "This is
yeah.
crazy."
Yeah. I had a bunch of people be like, "This is crazy," and then I'd kind of explain to them what I just explained to you, like, there's no punters in this class. This class has punters. I really feel like I can get drafted, like, blah, blah, all this stuff. And
well, I had to eat crow when I see your name get drafted in the 5th round by the 49ers.
Pick 165.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
He knew something that I didn't know.
And that was another God thing. Like, literally, the 49ers called me a week before the draft. I had not really talked to the 49ers. Actually, when I was at the Combine, I talked to 29 teams. 49ers had not even hired their coaches yet because they had just went through the Harbaugh change, basically. So I hadn't even talked to them yet. And it's like a week and a half before the draft, and it was looking like I was going to go to like Oakland or Miami. And both of them were like, "We're going to draft you. We just don't know where."
So they'd been telling you that.
Yeah. So I'm like, "Sweet, I'm getting drafted. Like, this is what's going on." I get a call on a Friday night at like 8 o'clock from a California number. And during this time, you answer every single phone call
I bet you do.
So, especially from a California number. So I was thinking it was Oakland, honestly. And I answered the phone, and he was like, "Hey, this is Thomas McGahee, special teams coach for the 49ers." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." He was like, "I'm going to be in town tomorrow to work you out." I'm like, "Okay." He said, "I need you to find a field, and this is my cell phone number. Text me where it's going to be and what time." He said, "Preferably in the morning." And I said, "Yes, sir." That was like the extent of the conversation.
And that was it. And it was game on. You better find a field.
Luckily, I knew everybody in the area, and we were in my hometown, and I found it was actually supposed to rain. So I was like, I need a turf field so I'm not kicking in mud. So I went to a new turf field that my grandpa was actually principal of the high school way back in the day, and or assistant principal of the high school way back in the day. And so we went to that high school, and it was pouring down rain. I hit 5 punts and crushed every single one of the punts. And the guy was like, "I don't need to see any more punts." I hit 4 kickoffs. Every single one of them was out the back of the end zone. And the guy was like, "All right, we're good." So I literally hit like maybe 10 balls total, 15 balls total for San Francisco. And then we went to eat this little breakfast spot down the street that was locally owned that we loved. And he was like, we'll be in touch. He flew back to California. I went back. I called my kicking coach, Dan. He's like one of my best friends. He was actually in my wedding. And was like, I just crushed that workout. I literally hit like 10 balls. And he was like, awesome. And 2 or 3 days before the draft comes, he calls me and was like, "We really want you. Like, be ready." And then the day of the draft, the second day of the draft, of course, I'm not going in the first day. Second day of the draft, He calls me and says, hold on to your seat. We don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to try to get you. And then I had looked at it already and kind of mapped out, like, all right, where do I think I'm going to go? And San Francisco had 3 picks in the 5th round. And everybody was like, yo, you'll go in the 6th or 7th round. I was like, nah, I'm going San Francisco right here in one of these 3 picks.
One of these in the 5th round.
And I actually didn't watch the first day of the draft. Couldn't sit still to watch it. Didn't watch the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th round. I sat down for the 5th round and was watching the tickers, watching it in San Francisco.
So where are you when you're watching?
I'm sitting in the living room in my house. I was actually like in the yard working because I couldn't sit still until the 5th round, and I had my mom call me into the house when the 5th round started. And I was sitting there and saw these San Francisco picks go by, and I was like, well, all right. Like, they had traded away one of them, and then next thing I know, they traded back in. And I'm just like, okay, like, what's going on? And then that pick rolls up, my phone rings, and it was one of the best days of my life.
Of course.
Yeah.
And what'd they say to you?
He was like, hey, Bradley, this is, we call him T-Mac. He was like, hey, Bradley, this is T-Mac. How you want to be a San Francisco 49er? And I'm like, I would love to be a San Francisco 49er. He was like, all right, I think we're about to draft you. And he handed the phone to the GM at the time, who was Trent Baalke, and Trent was, in his raspy voice that he has, was like, are you ready to be a San Francisco 49er? We're getting ready to draft you. Just submitted the card. Watched my name come across the screen, which was funny because they pronounced my name wrong on the TV. And then all the announcers was like, a punter is getting drafted in the 5th round. And
I know they had to be talking about it.
And I started doing all these media phone calls on through the 49ers. And literally, 10 days later, I was in San Francisco.
Who was the first person you told?
That I got drafted?
Yeah. I know your mom
my
was
mom
there.
was sitting there. I called my dad immediately and told him. Of course, he saw it on the TV, so he was waiting. And I was like, Dad, I'm sorry I couldn't call you and tell you beforehand. I was on the phone with them. Called them. I'd actually just gotten back together with my now wife. And so I called and told her. And then we actually basically called and told our whole family. And then we went and ate dinner as a big group. And it was awesome.
And then getting to San Francisco, what's that like, though, as you're coming in as a rookie?
Well,
You've got all these veterans.
Yeah. At the time, they still had a punter on their roster. They still had Andy Lee, who was a 3-time Pro Bowler, been in the league 11 years, still playing for Arizona. So I was thinking, like, I'm going to be on practice squad for a year. It was kind of what my thought, almost like redshirting, basically. And it was kind of what my thought process was. But then my agent called me and was like, there's some rumblings that they were getting rid of Andy. They're trading Andy. And then literally like 5 hours later, they traded Andy. And I'm like, well, all right, I guess I'm the guy. I'm the only one here. But it was good. I mean, we had some big names in the locker room at the time. Like, you had Colin Kaepernick, you had Eric Reed, you had Joe Staley, Darnell Dockett. Frank Gore had just left, but you still had guys like Cowboy. I don't remember what his real name is, but you had that team that had just gone to the Super Bowl,
That's
basically.
Right.
So there was a lot of huge names. I was like, oh, we're going to be great. Like, we're going to be good. And then that's when, like, everybody retired, everybody left. And but it was good. They really accepted me really well. I got the privilege of learning from Phil Dawson, one of the best to ever do it.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
For 2 years. And he taught me a lot. And then Phil Dawson left, and then Robbie Gould comes in, and he's another one of the best to ever do it. So I've played with 2 Hall of Fame, I truly believe Hall of Fame field goal kickers. Got to learn a lot from both of them. Both of them will be friends till the day I die.
And now, did the 49ers, did they want you just to concentrate punting only? Or
no, they wanted me to punt and kick off. So a lot of those teams now are going for older kickers because they know they can make field goals. But they're not going to quite be able to kick off. So it's like kind of made me a hot commodity right in kind of this day and era because they want the kid that can make the most field goals. But then if you have a guy that can punt and kick off, it makes your field goal kicker more accurate.
Yeah, because that's all they had to do
Right,
is specialize on the
So like Phil had
field
two.
goals.
Phil had 2 of his best years in his 15, 16-year career that he's had. Oh, he had more than that. It was 18, 19-year career that he's had. 2 of his best years when he was in San Francisco with me because all he was doing was focusing on kicking field goals. And then Robbie's actually had the 2 best years of his career, and he's played almost 15 years. We set the league record for percentage of made field goals over 2 years, me and Robbie have. And it's like at 96, 97% on field goals. I think we've missed like 3 or 4 and one of them was blocked, which counts as a miss in the past 2 years.
Yeah, that's a high percentage.
Yeah, and he's automatic. I mean, the dude's got ice in his veins. And he's so much fun to play with too, because we'll be joking around on the sideline, and then we go into the game, and it's just like different person comes out.
Okay, so
it's like you have one person on the sideline, and then you walk out onto that field, and it's like you can see the look in his eyes, and it's just like, all right, as long as I don't screw up this hold, we're making this. So it's been really cool to play with those guys.
How nervous do you get when you're having to hold?
Holding's one of my favorite things, honestly, and that was one of my knocks coming out because I didn't hold at Clemson. We had Chandler Catanzaro, who was still one of my great friends, but when the coach doing these big things, is basically like either letting like a walk-on guy or a kid that he thinks deserves to play that works his tail off hold. And that point, we had Corbin Jenkins was our holder, and he was our like fourth string punter. And he was our holder, and so that was actually a big knock on me coming out that I had to prove to teams. Like during my workouts, they would literally throw me balls to see if I could hold. I was like, I promise you I can hold. I'd held in practice at Clemson all the time because I knew the day was coming. And I begged Coach Sweeney to let me hold, and he just wouldn't do it.
He wouldn't do it.
He wouldn't do it. So it was.
I think it's one of the most undervalued.
Well, guys will get down on the
positions.
Guys will get down on the knee and try to do it, and they're like, I don't know what to do. And I'm just like, come on, guys. Here, you want me to do it left-handed? Here, I'll do it left-handed. No, it's one of the most fun parts of my job.
Yeah, but it's very important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, we saw Tony Romo.
Oh, yeah.
His missed hold.
Yeah.
Against Seattle. I mean, so it can change a game.
It can change a game for sure, and it's kind of goes like if you mess up, it goes kind of under the radar unless you mess up kind of like Tony Romo did. Yeah. But like if you screw up a hold, lean in the wrong or something along those lines, and the kicker misses it, the only person that's really going to know is between you and the kicker. And it depends on how nice your kicker is, if they're going to throw you under the bus or not.
Yeah, did you have any of those guys?
No,
hey,
I actually had.
Come on, Bradley. That was a horrible hold.
I mean, of course they'll tell me, but they'll never go to the media and be like, hey. Most of the time they'll be like, yeah,
it's his fault.
I should have made it. But actually, one of the reasons that I am as good of a holder as I am today is because Phil Dawson. I mean, he was pretty particular on the way he likes the ball being held. So I sat there on a jugs machine, the short jugs machine, and would catch like 100 field goal snaps a day when I first got there. Because, I mean, I wasn't 100% used to it. And he would sit there and I'd hold it, and he'd look at it and be like, all right, good. All right, lean this one a little more that way. All right, lean this. So I just gotten like a feel for it. And I credit him to like making me do that and kind of me being younger, 20. Because, I mean, I was the youngest player in the NFL my first year in the NFL. I was still 20, just turned 21 when my first season started.
A young pup, for sure.
Yeah. And he was probably the oldest guy in the NFL, if not close. Him and Vinatieri were kind of the same year. So
how tough was that then, being on your own out in San Francisco?
It wasn't too bad. Hadn't lived with my parents or anything for a while. And you still have the guys on the team, so you're still kind of like having that camaraderie of being around people. The toughest part was actually being away from my girlfriend at the time for basically 3 years. We lived across separate ends of the country, which was tough. The time distance, she had just started being a kindergarten teacher, so she was trying to go to bed early, and when I'm like, it's like 9 o'clock here and it's 6 o'clock in California, and you're trying to have conversations. I ended up waking up at like 3 a.m. in the morning while she's driving on the way to work just to have conversations with her. And then that got me in trouble because it's 3 a.m. and I'm falling asleep on the telephone, and it was tough. That was one of the toughest parts. And that's one of the best things that we got married, and she decided, you know what, like I'm coming to California with you. And so this past year was our first year together, actually for like a whole year since college. And it was really, really good.
Yeah. How did you propose to her?
So it was actually really cool. We actually got a dog, which was insane. I don't recommend anybody doing this.
Dogs are.
We got a dog.
That's a commitment too.
My freshman year of college, her sophomore. She's a year older than me. Her sophomore year, and the only thing she loves more than me is that dog. I promise you.
It depends on the day, though, right?
No, it's always the dog. Always the dog. And so we were. She loves that dog. And actually, when we broke up, she kept the dog. I tried to fight for the dog. She kept the dog. And so when we got back together, I knew it was like, all right, this is the woman I'm marrying. Like I knew. So I waited probably 2 years, and took the dog. I had this whole thing set up. like this whole big proposal. So I'm really good friends with the country. I don't know if you listen to country music, but Low Cash.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm really good friends with Preston and Chris from Low Cash. And I had it all set up. They were having a concert in Charlotte. I was going to do it on stage at the concert. And my wife's, I'm pretty like, if I'm doing it big. And my wife's very, very Pickens, if you know what I mean. Like very small town, very not going to do it.
She doesn't
big.
need a lot of
right. Well, somehow
fanfare.
I had like her family coming into Charlotte, my family coming into Charlotte. My brother was going to be there. And I was on the phone and like trying to see if my brother was going to be there because I had blocked off hotel rooms. And I took the phone call, was talking to my brother and hung up, and then he texted me and was like, hey, we'll be there, because he knew I was with Kaylee at the time. He was like, hey, we'll be there. And I was just like not even thinking out loud, like, oh, awesome, my brother's going to be there. And I'm like, she was like, going to be where? And I was like, oh, they want to surprise you and come into town for the concert. And I'm like, shh, I just screwed this up. So she starts texting, because I'd already told all of her friends because they were all coming. She starts texting all of her friends, like, if he's going to do this on stage, like, and I was like, all right, I got to change something. So literally I reverted plans, like, last minute and made a sign and put it around our dog. Our dog's name's Nala. One of our dogs' name is Nala. And wrote, will you marry Dad on it? And had her... and took her and set her in front. Like, she's certified as a service dog, basically. So she's...
And what type of dog?
It's a lab.
Okay.
She's a very obedient dog. And I set her in front of the door and rang the doorbell. And I was all dressed up and got down on one knee and had the ring sitting there when she opened the door and the sign right beside me on the dog. So it worked out really well. And then we went to the concert afterwards and hung out with all of our friends and family. And we actually did go up on stage and dance. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. We actually did go up on stage and dance.
You need to make sure you're up there.
We still got it. But that's kind of how I did it. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Well, my wife's probably going to be jealous because it definitely was not as memorable when I proposed 20 plus years ago. And so I am envious and jealous that I didn't do something as special as you did. So
and the best part about it was she would have been happy with me just taking her to dinner.
That's true. That's right. That's what we say, right?
That was the best part about it. I went above and beyond and didn't have to.
Now, you were, obviously, you mentioned some of the players that were there, mm-hmm. Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. So you were there for the
I was
circus.
there through the whole shebang, yep.
What was that like, being in the middle of that firestorm?
You know, people ask me that all the time. And Cap is actually a really good dude. An awesome guy. Love him to death. He could call me today and I'd give him the shirt off my back. But and I understand what he's doing. I really do. I get it. Does it match with my beliefs? No, not exactly. But I understand what he's doing, and in a way I kind of support what he's doing. Now, granted, not to the extreme that he's doing it. I would never take a knee for the national anthem. That's just not who I am. But it was very eye-opening. I think the only place he could have did that was San Francisco. So he was very fortunate that he was in San Francisco. But it was honestly, looking back on it now that it's kind of passed a little bit, it was kind of cool to be a part of, because you had conversations with guys in locker rooms that kind of transcended race, and
you probably wouldn't have ever had those.
Ever really had.
That's right.
So it was cool, but one of the craziest part about it would be like being booed running onto your own home field. That part still like irked me with the fans at that point. Like you'd be booed, the national anthem would be playing, and there'd be people booing because he'd be taking a knee. That's the kind of stuff that I really didn't like about it. And I kind of didn't like that it kind of drew away from actual football. And that's what I would tell people. I'm like, I understand what he's doing and understand the oppression part of it. I understand the police brutality part of it. Do I think there's better ways that it probably could have been done? Absolutely, everybody does. But there's always going to be. You could find the perfect thing, and somebody's still going to think there's a better way to do it. But it was very eye-opening, and a guy coming from Concord, Charlotte area to kind of get to experience that, and marrying a girl from the Pickens area, and going to school in Clemson. It was very different for me to go through, but it was actually, like, looking back on it, it was kind of cool to be like, because that'll be something that goes down in history.
Big time.
Yeah, and to say you were part of that team, you knew Cap. I knew Cap pretty well. I actually used to play him in ping pong every single day, and so like just to kind of say you knew him and you were part of it. It's kind of cool to say, but it was like a crazy time. Like parts it got scary because you didn't know if fans were going to throw something. You didn't know somebody was going to try, because there was people that wanted to kill Cap. I mean, there's people that wanted to shoot him. You didn't know if Cap was going to get shot going onto the field.
Did you ever really think about that as you're getting out there to play?
You would definitely think about it. You would 100% think about it because, I mean, there was, like, if you could see the amount of, like, letters that Cap got, it'd be, like, boxes upon boxes. Some of them would be death threats. Some of them would be people supporting him. Some people, it was insane. I honestly, like, I don't know how Cap went through it. I really don't. Like I said, I have a lot of respect for him. He called me today. I had to give him the shirt off my back. But it was a crazy time.
Was the locker room divided?
There was reports that it was, but I really never felt it was really divided. It put some tension. You have some good old boys on some teams. I mean, there's always going to be good old boys, and there's always going to be people of different races on teams. And so, I mean, I don't think it ever really divided our locker room. I think it was more guys really just didn't like it as a distraction from the aspect of it where, like, reporters wouldn't ask you about football anymore.
They were always asking you questions about the national anthem.
What are you going to do for the national anthem? Do you support Cap? And if you come out and say, no, I don't support Cap, it makes you look like a bad guy. Well, if you come out and say, I support Cap, it makes you look like a bad guy. So it was like guys were just kind of fed up with that side of it. I don't think anybody actually really, I won't say cared that he was doing it. I think they cared that it was taken away from football. And that's what I cared about. Like, I don't really care that you're doing it. I don't really care. You have the right to stand up for what you want to stand up for. But I don't like the fact that it's taken away from my job in football and the way that it shifted the focus for the San Francisco 49ers for a few years away from football and on to social injustice. And it's finally switched back.
Yeah. Now, who would win in ping pong, you or Cap?
Oh, me, every time. Every single time. Every time. Specialists are always the best ping pong players in the room.
No, why is that?
It's probably because we have the most time.
Yeah, because you get to practice all the time, right?
Yeah. But yeah, no, definitely me. Actually, the best ping pong player I've ever seen is Matt Barkley.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Best football ping pong player I've ever seen is Matt Barkley.
You couldn't beat him?
Mm-mm. I beat him a few times, but dude's good. Dude's real good.
Could you ever officially make the transition when you retire from football to go into ping pong?
No chance. Those guys are unreal. You sitting there watching those ping pong videos.
It's insane,
like,
isn't it?
Yeah, no, not that good.
Yeah.
Good, but not that good.
Now, how many tackles have you had in the NFL?
I used to know this stat. I think I'm 4 for 6 on tackles. I had 2 this year. I had one or two my rookie year. I got completely put on skates. No, I'm like 4 for 6. I got put on skates by Lockett my rookie year. I got put on skates by Lockett. I don't think it was Lockett. Maybe, I don't know who it was this year, but it was Seattle's kick returner. I got put on skates by him again this year. Both of them were against Seattle. But yeah, I think I'm like 4 for 6, somewhere in there.
And how, when you have to watch film, are guys laughing at you because you got put on skates?
No, here's my philosophy. There's 10 other guys' job to tackle one dude, and my job's to punt the football. If I'm having to make a tackle, something went wrong.
Something has gone really, really wrong.
No, they don't make fun of you. Actually, we actually do tackling circuit. Me and Robbie do every week. So I know how to make a tackle. It's a lot different when it's game speed, and that guy's 250 pounds running up 4-5 straight back at you. So
I don't know how guys make tackles. I really don't.
It's insane how these guys go through it and make those tackles every week. I made one tackle and thought my shoulder had broke. So,
now, what would you be doing if you weren't playing football?
Somewhere in the business sector. My dad was CEO of a company for a really long time, so I'd be some type of my degrees in business management. So I'd be doing something like that, or I'd be coaching. If I wouldn't have made it into the NFL, I'd be coaching football somewhere. I don't think I'll ever be able to fully step away from football.
So has football, obviously, I mean, I know it's your career and everything, but has it taken place of your true love of soccer, though?
Oh, for sure. 100%. And that happened in high school. I played soccer, actually. I used to be at the football practice, leave football practice, go to soccer practice, leave soccer practice, go back to football practice. That's kind of what my high school was like. So I played both in high school, but yeah. I'm still Clemson. I love watching soccer. I still watch soccer. I would love to play it, but I'm not going to risk it. But yeah, it's definitely taking place. I love football. shoot, my life rotates around football. So
Exactly.
I have
This
to love
is your
it.
career now.
Yeah,
You
I
better
have to
love it.
I have to love it.
Right. Now, other things that I like to focus on as
Yeah.
we're wrapping up here is just words of wisdom that can impact people's lives. And it can be phrases, mottos, quotes, or whatever. But what about from your perspective? Do you have any words of wisdom? And it could just be even life advice that has meant a lot to you.
One of the biggest ones, like I said earlier, is that Proverbs 23:7, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And that's basically just being like, trust your heart, trust your gut, and give it all you got. Go at everything, even if people think you're crazy. Go at everything with like you aren't crazy, even though you are crazy. That's my biggest one. And then another one is just don't ever give up, no matter what your circumstances are, no matter if your parents are getting divorced, no matter if people say you can't do it. That means you should try harder. It means you should prove more people wrong. And that's really what my whole career has been about. People have been like, oh, you're not good enough to leave early. All right, well, I'm going to leave early then. Oh, you're not good enough to make it 4 years in the NFL. Well, I'm going into my 5th year this year. Like, you're not good enough to get a D1 scholarship. Well, I had about 33 of them. That's just kind of like what my whole life's been about.
And were you motivated to prove people wrong?
Always. That's just like the person I am. I'm super competitive. Like, me and my wife can't play games together because we're both super competitive, and it just ends in a fight every single time. I'm super competitive, and that's just partly of what's gotten me to where I am today. It's just being competitive and wanting to compete and wanting to win and wanting to be the best to do it and wanting to be like the Ray Guys of the world, wanting to be like the Chris Gardakis, wanting to be like the Dale Hatchers, like wanting to be like these guys that just played for forever, and wanting to be in that Clemson Hall of Fame, wanting to be in the NFL Hall of Fame. That's the stuff that drives you. And if the stuff like that doesn't drive you, then you aren't going to last. And that's just kind of what I've learned from these older cats like Phil and like Robbie and like Joe Staley's and the Richard Shermans and all these guys that I'm playing with. It's they have things outside of football that motivate them more than actual football does. And that's what keeps you going. That's what keeps you playing into your 40s like Adam Vinatieri. That's what keeps you playing and being the best your careers you've ever had at 35 like Robbie Gould. And that's kind of what drives you.
Can you play into your 40s?
If I played into my 40s, I would have played over 20 years. I don't
That'd
know.
be a great career.
A heck of a career. I think my wife would kill me if I did that. She used to tell me all the time. I don't think it's this way anymore, but she used to tell me all the time. Her least favorite part about me is that I played football. This is probably why I married her. Because she loves football. She loves watching football. But football takes a lot of time. It takes a lot away from actually being a family. And she used to tell me that all the time. We'd laugh about it to this day. But yeah.
Well, you're definitely following your heart
Thank
and
you.
not giving up. So congratulations on where you're going. And obviously, I can't thank you enough for being a guest here on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a great time.